my most famous quote ever was in an article in the New York Times many, many years ago. Then that people, I talked to the reporter for an hour and a half, and the only quote I was given in this article was, "I can't understand how people can get naked together before they get married, but they can't talk about financial issues." And I really meant that. I mean, it's surprising to me that people are nervous about talking money before they get married. And in my opinion, money is the core of resentments and problems and issues, negative issues in marriages. And if people talk about it before they get married, which they have to do if they're entering into a prenuptial agreement, a lot of stuff gets put on the table that would not otherwise have been put on the table and gets talked through and decided upon.
On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Susan Breach Winters, the preeminent family law attorney in New Jersey and New York and author of 3 books. Susan brings more than 35 years of experience across all areas of family law, including divorce, prenuptial agreements, business and other asset valuations, custody and timesharing, child support, alimony, and equitable distribution. Today, you will learn about why everyone should have a prenuptial agreement, what a post-nuptial agreement is and how it works, Susan's team approach to divorce and the importance of having a team in a divorce litigation, and my personal favorite, the importance of having constant communication with your clients for success for everybody. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, I'm Mark Murphy, founder and CEO of Northeast Private Client Group and the author of 3 books. And thank you for tuning into my podcast. I'd like to introduce you to my very good friend, Susan Winters. And she's also an author herself. The author of the book, Will Never Happen to Us. And you also co-authored Thomson West's New Jersey Family Law Practice, as well as you were the co-author of Domestic Relations. So you've got three books as well. As a fellow author, tell me a little about your experience writing books.
Well, I'm trying to compete with you, Mark. That's why I have 3 books. If you write a 4th one, I'm going to have to write a 4th one too.
Well, maybe we'll do it together.
The first two are made for lawyers. They're legal handbooks. One is a book of case law and statutes applicable to family law in New Jersey. The other is forms to use when you're putting together all sorts of legal documents, most particularly prenuptial agreements, marital settlement agreements, and the like. The third one, That Will Never Happen to Us, was really written for the lay person who is either married, getting married, hopes to get married, or their adult children are getting married. And that one came about because my adult children were getting married and their friends were planning on getting married, and they were asking me whether they needed prenups. And of course, my pat answer was always, of course you do. And they wanted to know why. And it occurred to me that a book explaining why prenuptial agreements are so important, even if you're a young adult getting married with nothing, you're going to have something, hopefully at some point, and you need to think ahead to the possibility, unfortunately, since the rate of divorces is 50%, that you might be one of that group. And so my children and I and their friends all collaborated on putting together a book talking about the value of prenuptial agreements, the value of discussing financial issues before you get married, the value of facing certain adversities, financial and otherwise, before you get married, a checklist of things to think about and experiences to have before you get married. And hopefully it'll be a helpful guidebook for people who are getting married. And for people like myself and yourself, whose children will get married and will face the possibility of divorce, and what to do to be able to give and leave wealth to your children without being concerned that it would go to their spouses in the event of a divorce.
One of the questions, we know each other so well for so long. The thing that bothers, the thing that keeps, it gets me upset is there's only 24 hours in a day. So at the end of the day, you get back and you go, I never feel like I'm doing a good enough job and giving enough hours to my company, even though I'm working round the clock. I'm never giving enough time to Lisa. I'm never giving enough time to the 5 kids. I'm never being as, my parents have recently passed. I'm never being a good enough son. And so the idea is just the guilt and the stress, and that you're just working so hard and trying to make it all work. You and Bob have been happily married for 35 years. I mean, I've known Bob and both of you for 25 of those years. You've got 2 amazing children who I've known since they were little. Is that a concern for you? I mean, how do you balance that all? That's a challenge I have every single day.
It was a concern for me much more so when my children were younger. They're now 30 and 32, and they're able to tell me exactly what they think of me, for good or for bad. And I think that we have been successful in balancing life and work. I'm not sure if both of us were, AAA personalities like I am, and would have worked as well. But my husband was able to be there always, for our family, because he had his own practice. He's a lawyer as well, but he had a lot more flexibility because I always worked in a big law firm and he worked for himself. So it was a good mix of, when I was available, he wasn't, and vice versa. And now that my children are adults and able to tell us what they think of their childhood, they tell us that they think that we did our best to be there for them as much as we could. I never missed a hockey practice or a game. Both my kids played ice hockey, and my husband certainly didn't. He coached hockey and the like. But I think, it sounds cliche, but it really is quality versus quantity. I know parents who are there all the time and they're not paying any attention to their children. And it's hard because when you're at work, you think you should be at home. When you're at home, you think you should be at work. But I always feel like you just can't say I can't do it. You can do it. You can put your kids to bed if they're little, at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And then, instead of sitting in front of the TV for 3 hours, you can work for 3 hours. And I always worked at crazy hours, crazy times of the day, weekends, but I did it for me. I did it because I was able to work when it didn't take away from my family. And I don't, half the time my kids were sleeping and I was sitting up, working for the next day. And I told the people in my department the same thing, that, I don't care if you do something at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning, as long as it's done when it needs to be done. And many of us, including my assistant, who's been with me for 30 years and who's the best of the best, work remotely if you need to. Way before COVID, lots of my people in my department were working remotely, and it didn't matter. It's all about communication. And as long as you're communicating and getting stuff done and the clients are satisfied, doesn't matter to me where you do it, when you do it, as long as it's perfect. Of course, it has to be perfect. And I pride myself on that.
What I think everybody knows, or a lot of people certainly know, that you're the preeminent and best family law attorney in the country. People know that there very few people are the very best at what they do. You are the very best at what you do.
Thank you.
But I think what people don't know is you were a college athlete and you were a teacher first. So I think I'd love to know, I know, but I'd love people to know how you went from basketball, then teaching, to law, and then and how you discovered family law. Because, how did this journey, they'd love to hear that journey, because there's a lot of people trying to figure that out right now.
Well, I think I've always been a people person. I always wanted to be one-on-one with people, and especially children. I always had a place in my heart to take care of children. And so when I went to college, there weren't a lot of options for women. Nobody said be a lawyer, that's for sure. In fact, my high school guidance counselor said my only 2 choices were teacher or nurse, because those were the only professions that women were able to handle. So I don't like blood, and so I figured I'm not going to be a nurse, and so I chose teacher. But it was good for me because I do love children and I do love working with children. And Special needs children were first really getting the attention that they deserve when I was in college. So I majored in special needs as education and worked as a special needs children teacher for a couple of years. The problem was when I got out of college, the job opportunities were very limited. And I worked in a state institution with very limited resources. And it was very frustrating because I was going to save all the children in New Jersey when I was going to be a teacher. And it was impossible without being able to get, the books and the supplies and things like that that the state back then just was not supplying. And so in total frustration, I said, you know what, I am going to apply to law school because maybe I could work in an area where I could continue to help children. And I didn't even know, because I really didn't have any guidance at the time. I didn't know you had to take a test to get into law school. So I just applied. And of course, I had no money whatsoever to pay for law school, but I figured I'll just apply. I also didn't think you could go to school outside the state of New Jersey. For some reason, somebody told me that once. So I applied to two schools, Rutgers and Seton Hall in New Jersey. And Rutgers said, you can be on the waiting list. I'm still on the waiting list. I never heard back from them 40 years later. And Seton Hall said, you can come here, but you have to take the LSATs. So I asked around, figured out what I needed to do, and I took the LSATs and fortunately got into Seton Hall Law School. And Seton Hall was very generous to me. I did extra work for the school and they helped me with tuition and all of that. And I was very lucky also in landing my first job at a firm called Bud Larner, where I was for literally 40 years. They mentored me. And you asked why family law? So when I joined Bud Larner, there were maybe 15, 20 lawyers, and I was working 15, 20 hours a day. Like everybody in the firm wanted me for an hour, do this for me, do that for me. And, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I was doing environmental law. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I was doing corporate law. And I got a great education because of that. But when I was starting my family, I said to myself, I cannot work these many hours for these many people and still be the mom I wanted to be. So I went to the senior partner that I was working for, a wonderful man by the name of Carl Greenberg, who I think you've met, you know what I'm talking about. And I said to him, what do I do? Because I love this firm. I love you. I want to stay here, but I don't think I can do what I've been doing. Since I graduated from law school, and I'd probably been there 5 years at the time. And he said, well, just start your own department and then you can be your own boss. And I was like, well, I don't have any clients. How can I do that? And what department? He said, well, you've always liked working with people. You like children. Why don't you do family law? We don't have a family law department and we'll help you. And they did. And it started out just me. And at one point in time at Bud Larner, we were up to almost 19 lawyers in my department. And we were, by the end, one of the top 3 grossing departments, in terms of revenue for the firm. And we did it, with one client and then 2 and then 3 and built from there. And with the help of my mentors at my firm, who introduced me to other family law lawyers, who introduced me to people, like yourself, who could refer clients to me. We built a practice, and it did allow me to do what I was describing before: work when I wanted to work, at midnight or 2 a.m., Saturdays or not. Mm-hmm. There wasn't anyone I needed to answer to, which is something my dad always told me: be independent. If you're independent and you have your own book of business, you can write your own ticket. And that's how it turned out, sort of just by luck.
You can be the best financial advisor in the world or the best attorney in the world, but if you don't have any clients, nobody knows about it. So when I first met you, the most brilliant thing I have ever seen to date, I've not seen anybody in any field do it better. You created the team approach to divorce. And Obviously I'd love you to share what that is and what that meant to your practice, but more importantly, what's that meant to your clients? Because it's flat out knockdown brilliant.
Well, what I realized early on in my practice of family law is that there were a lot of family law lawyers who thought they were therapists, who thought they were trust and estate lawyers, who thought they were financial advisors, accountants. And I couldn't understand that because I went to the same law school they went to. I studied the same law and understood the family law practice and knew for sure that I could not give therapy. I could not give financial advice. I could not do forensic accounting. I could not talk to them about the value of estate planning. And I went to different people whose expertises were in those fields and said, how can we work together so that our individual expertises can benefit the client? And we would put together a team. So depending on what the client's needs were, I called myself the quarterback of the team, even though I don't understand football that well, but I knew what a quarterback did. And I said, I will be the quarterback. And I said to my clients, I will be the quarterback and I will find you the other members of your team that you need given your particular circumstances. So if someone was struggling emotionally, which is almost everyone, and I don't blame them, going through a divorce, I would say you need a really good therapist who understands the stages of divorce and what you're going through. And let's find you someone that you can talk to, because talking to me, you might as well talk to your sister, your friends. I don't have any training in that. Let's find you someone who does. Practically everyone going through a divorce needs a financial advisor. I would say, let's get Mark Murphy on the phone. Let's talk about what he can do for us. If there was a business involved that needed to be evaluated or a tracing of assets, we need a forensic accountant. Let's talk to these couple of people that I know who do that for a living, who can add value to your case. And we all, again, depending on the particular needs of the client, we would then all work together and provide the best service possible. Because, the one thing every client would say to me was, oh my gosh, now I have to pay 3 people. Now I have to pay 4 people. It's bad enough having to pay a lawyer. And I said, no, you don't understand. Don't pay a lawyer to give you therapy. Don't pay a lawyer to give you financial advice. Pay the person who has that expertise. And you're going to wind up saving money because you're going to be talking to the person who can really help you. And I look like the best lawyer in the world because I can walk into court with something that you or a forensic accountant have prepared for me. And it's perfect because it was prepared by a person who knew what they were doing. It's been wonderful. And I'm actually surprised that more family law lawyers have not really adopted that approach, because my clients are very, very grateful that they have someone like you on the team. And when the case is over and before they sign the final agreement, they know that the rest of their life is planned out financially. They know they can, afford what they want to, the lifestyle that they want to live, and you pick it up from there and they're all set.
I don't believe in competition. I think there's plenty of work and a lot of abundance for lots of family law attorneys, lots of financial advisors, but clearly I believe in differentiation, and clearly that team approach to divorce differentiated you. So if you had, like in my mind, I think financial firms, but in your mind, I think so clearly, if there were 4 family law attorneys lined up one after the other, why would they pick you than the other 3? That's a clear differentiator. There's many more, but that's a clear differentiator. And I'm sure if they interviewed 4 firms, which people often do, they would pick you every time, not only because of who you are and the work you did, but it clearly gives them security, peace of mind, and that they've got sort of the cradle to grave of a la carte to be able to pick and choose what they want, but to make sure that they can get the best result and then go on to have the best life they have, the best life possible. And all I can tell you is the reason why you're the best is that there are an army of people out there that literally grab their friends when they're going through a divorce by the wrist and they drag them into your office. So that's how we know it's working, because it's been going on, and it's been going on for decades.
It concerned me that clients were signing agreements and then adding professionals to their team, and it's too late. It was too late. Once you sign an agreement, you are stuck with it. You can't then go to a financial advisor and the financial advisor says, whoa, what did you sign here? This isn't good enough for you. This isn't going to accomplish your financial goals. And, then the client would call the lawyer and say, this isn't good enough. My financial advisor said, well, the financial advisor should have been there all along. Day one, I put my team together. It has to be day one, because there's so many things that go on in the course of the divorce where financial decisions need to be made, planning needs to be done. People need to be emotionally stable to make them. So all of these team members, day one, I talk to my clients about the team and who should be on their team.
You probably remember this, but it was about 15 years ago where I was tasked with this project. I had 4 women between 27 and 41 who were on track to become partners at an international accounting firm. And I was, I don't, either I was volunteered or I was volunteered to help mentor them to partnership. And so immediately what I did is I called you, and I still, years later, although, what I got out of that was, hopefully I helped them. But what I got out of that was, I've got 4 women that will take a bullet for me. And I've got whatever I taught them, I learned 10 times as much from their perspective. But since I didn't know what I was doing, the first call I made was to you. And they still talk to me about years later about how invaluable you were at helping them think through not the next client, but how they presented themselves, what the future would look like, to sort of, the languaging I would use is, I think you help them focus on their future self, not who they were that minute, but who they were going to be and who they aspired to be. I'd love you to comment, because that was such a cool project that had got to be part of, but it wouldn't have been successful without your help.
Oh,
I'd love to hear your thought about that.
I do remember that
Yeah.
very well, and those women were fabulous. And I love to mentor women. No offense to men. I mean, I love men too, but I love to see a woman at any age be successful. It's just such a joy to me to see somebody, and it could be a young person who says, I can't do something, in which case I say, yes, you can, and here's how you can. And I think that's all people need to hear, and talk about what they need to do to accomplish whatever it is they want to accomplish. But also older women. I represent women who are older and who have been out of the workforce for many years, decades in some cases. And the way the law in New Jersey and New York is set up does not really allow for women not to earn money or not to be imputed an income. And they're deer in the headlights, scared. And I don't blame them to go back to work after 10, 20 years out of the workforce. Don't have the computer skills, don't have this, don't have that, don't have the confidence. And I tell them the same thing. Yes, you can. And I can't tell you the number of clients that I have had at all ages that I say, I am so proud of you. You are the poster child for, I can't do it. Yes, you can. And women go back to school, they take computer courses, even young women who have been out of the workforce, 4 or 5 years, even just, having a baby, right after getting married and deciding not to work for a few years, and then unfortunately winding up in a divorce. And it's scary, but I am telling you, it can be done. And I love it when they take my advice that they can do it, and they do go ahead and do it.
The other thing people, I think, reflexively says, a family law attorney, of course, will help me through my divorce. But I find you spend as much or more time on prenuptial agreements and post-nuptial agreements and child custody. What is that? What does the whole field like encompass? What are other things that people, that they should be focusing on, but they're not focusing on those types of agreements?
Well, definitely prenuptial agreements. And I'm happy to say I'm doing more and more of them, because I think that they are invaluable in terms of forcing a marrying couple and their parents and others to talk about financial issues. It's so funny. I mean, my most famous quote ever was in an article in the New York Times many years ago. Then that people, I talked to the reporter for an hour and a half, and the only quote I was given in this article was, "I can't understand how people can get naked together before they get married, but they can't talk about financial issues." And I really meant that. I mean, it's surprising to me that people are nervous about talking money before they get married. And in my opinion, money is the core of resentments and problems and issues, negative issues in marriages. And if people talk about it before they get married, which they have to do if they're entering into a prenuptial agreement, a lot of stuff gets put on the table that would not otherwise have been put on the table and gets talked through and decided upon. And you would be surprised how many people have differences of opinions about money that they've never voiced to their fiance or their parents or their in-laws or whatever it is. And when you're doing a prenuptial agreement, which basically talks about what happens if the couple gets divorced, how are the assets viewed, how are the assets distributed, does anybody get alimony? The only thing you can't deal with in a prenuptial agreement is child support and child custody. Everything else you can talk about and agree to ahead of time. And if a prenuptial agreement is done properly, and there's a statute in New Jersey and New York that tells you how to do that. And if it's done properly, it'll be enforced. And then a divorce simply is, we're going to enforce the terms of the prenuptial agreement, pre-agreed upon, and all laid out in the prenup. And then the only thing left to talk about, not that it's the only thing because it's the most important thing, but is child custody and child support. But you're not fighting about alimony. You're not fighting about the distribution of assets. You're not fighting about a business valuation. It's all agreed upon in advance. And it makes what is otherwise a very lengthy, expensive, heart-wrenching experience much easier. It's still not easy because you have to deal with child issues and the emotions of the divorce and everything else, but it is much easier and much less expensive. Post-nuptial agreements is another area that's becoming much more popular. New York views post-nuptial agreements much more kindly than New Jersey. My partners and I are working on the New Jersey courts to try to get the judges to appreciate the value of post-nuptial agreements, which are just what the name says, agreements reached between a married couple. So couples who did not have prenuptial agreements realize after they're married that that probably would have been a good idea. Or one party.
But if both parties are represented by competent counsel and they go into it with free will, why do New Jersey courts not look at them favorably right now?
Because even though that's the facts, that's what happened. They went into it freely with counsel and not under duress. When they're getting divorced, they look back and they say, I don't like the terms of the post-nuptial agreement. I want more. So I'm going to claim that I was under duress. And so they say the agreement is not valid because I was under duress. Duress is a tough thing to prove or disprove. So you wind up in litigation over the validity of the post-nuptial agreement. That's New Jersey. New York is more of the mind, the New York courts are more of the mind to say two adults can contract for whatever they want, whether they're married or not. And I happen to agree very strongly in that position. So we've been trying to get New Jersey sort of up to speed on that and look at spouses as equals and not as one person is, overpowering the other, that if there is a lawyer involved and the person, is of sound mind, there should be no reason why, again, two adults can't contract, even married couples.
I think, when I put together this podcast, the kind of working title was, I talked about heroes a lot because, one is I wanted to only have people that were personal heroes to me on my podcast. And you're clearly fit that bill. And I think the second thing is I decided 37 years ago I wanted to be a hero to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking people and to our clients. And clearly, you've been a hero to your clients. I know that because I know many of them. Um, any comment about what you think a hero or who people heroes to you are? Because that's we as I always say, we both one thing that we also have in common. I think we both thought we'd be successful. I think we both thought we'd make money, but this has really been our vehicle to make other people's lives better. And so to me, that's what a hero is to me. But I just love your comment because we've talked about a lot of things over the years, but that's not something a topic we've ever talked about.
Well, I agree with you 100% in your definition of a hero. And I also think it harkens back to what I said before. It's a hero is someone who never says, I can't do it. And the other side of the coin is being a hero to someone is telling them they can do it and encouraging them to do it and supporting them to do whatever their life's dream is or whatever the next step is in their life. And I just think I have a very, very positive attitude when it comes to everyone doing what they want to do, and me kind of saying, well, why not? Of course you can. And I can tell them, my story, and it was like I said, I kind of, a lot of it I did sort of just innocently or blindly, thinking there were no barriers. And I guess maybe if you can encourage someone to think there are no barriers, you can do it, you can accomplish what you want to accomplish and do whatever you can do to assist them, then I think you are a hero and to them, and then they become a hero to you because they did it. Mm. Proud of them.
We've both been doing this a long time, and I know we've been together. We've done marketing events together. We've done seminars together. We've been to political events together. We've had dinners with clients together, with you and I and Bob and partners of mine, partners of yours. I look back on it, and it's been a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work and tiring. I don't know. Is it more fun or is it more tiring at this point? I still love it, but it's. We were doing it. We were doing it like 3 or 4 nights a week, together and apart, for a long time. And it's, I look, how do you reflect on it now and going in the future?
Well, you certainly always made it a lot of fun, Mark. And I got to have, some amazing experiences going to places I never would have gone, restaurants I never would have gotten to go to, people I never would have met. And I think when you're doing it, when you're in the middle of it, it's fun. Because people are enjoying themselves, they're talking about themselves, they're talking about their dreams and their jobs, their histories, whatever it is. So when you're in the moment, I think it is a lot of fun. And I'll never forget you inviting me to Mardi Gras. Like, what would have been the chance that I would dress up like a Renaissance maiden and throw beads out to little kids on the streets of New Orleans? It was fun. But when you get home and you close the door, it's like, oh, that was a lot of work. But it's worth it. It's worth it. The connections you make, the people you meet, the lives you touch, the experience you have. And it's very interesting because I see young people now willing, some of them willing to do it. And I say to them, trust me, it's another job. You have your family as a job, you have your job as your job, and then you have your networking and marketing as another job. So you have to be willing to look at it as such. And it definitely looks like a lot more fun from the outside looking in than when you're in that grind. But I think in the long run, the experiences I've had, it's been worth it. And certainly the business that it's brought to me and the experiences it has brought to me, I definitely think it was worth it. And, do I still do it? Not to the extent you do it as much. I don't know that you have to do it as much as you do it. I think you're just programmed like that to continue to entertain people and help people. And I am too, but maybe a little bit differently these days because of the whole remote thing now. Even before folks are remote now. I don't meet clients in person as much. I don't go out to dinner as much with clients or referring people. But I think it's keeping in touch and keeping that connection. And so now it's by Zoom instead of, at a dinner party or at a fundraiser. But it's different ways of doing it. And my husband's been playing music recently in a band, which has been such a kick. And
That's awesome.
I am absolutely amazed at the connections that I have made, literally just sitting in a venue where he's playing music by myself and talking to people that are around me, either sitting at a bar or at a restaurant, whatever it is. And I think people are people wherever you are, and they want to know, who are you? What do you do? And of course, I always manage to tell them I'm a family law lawyer, and I live in Florida some of the time, and I have a mediation certification in Florida. So wherever I am, it might be a hockey arena, it might be a bar in Florida, but I'm always trying to work in, what I do for a living and how I like to take this team approach and help people.
I think that is absolutely fabulous. One of the things I find with young people is, and there's young people that work in our firm, is they're focusing very hard on mastering their craft, so they focus on the transactional piece. But I think the thing that's the discovery part for them, that as long as the people we work with are people, and as long as the clients are people, we're not really in the financial services business, we're in the people business. Right. And I think when they make that connection, because they're so programmed, all they do is play video games and are on their phones all the time, that they're seeing like the world open up once they have more relational transactions than transactional transactions or interactions. And so I just wonder, this Zoom has been amazing, and it's become not a communication device, but a transportation device.
Yes.
And, so it's one thing for you and I to Zoom. We know each other very well. It's another thing to have that I haven't convinced myself yet or not, is with a brand new relationship, can you have those transformational kinds of relationships if you've never really met the person, or is it important to meet them? And so far so good, but it's a new process and it's a discovery. And I think people that have a hard time connecting are going to have even a harder time connecting with new people on Zoom. What's your experience been?
I've had a wonderful experience, honestly. And right at this moment, I have only actually met in person 2 clients I'm currently representing. All the rest of them, we're either talking on the phone or we're having a Zoom meeting like this one. And like you said, people are people. If we were sitting across from each other, I don't think it would be any different than us talking right now. And I think my clients are very comfortable with that. And I think for one very good reason, and this has been sort of the center pin of my practice as well, it's constant communication. Right. I know that if I was going through a divorce, I would want to have my lawyer on speed dial, and I would want to be able to get on Zoom with them or whatever I wanted, any minute, any moment of any day that I wanted to. And I am always available. I pride myself in communication, because there are a lot of lawyers who, get a call on Monday and return it on Friday. That is completely unacceptable. I've had a rule in my department for all the years I've practiced, from the moment I got my first associate, and basically was, you call a client and even an adversary back, or email them or text them, some way communicate back within the same 24 hours that they reached out to you, or you're fired. And that was basically my rule. And nobody ever crossed that rule, because they know how serious I am about that. And I know you're the same way. And it means the world to me that if I call you, I know I'm not going to be waiting 3 days to get a call back from you. And it wouldn't matter if I said, come meet with me or call me. It doesn't matter. I just need to talk to you. I need to communicate.
As our firm has gotten larger, the thing that I've got to communicate to people that's the most frustrating is, you and I are both, and I use it in the most highest compliment, we are psychotic about returning texts, emails, phone calls right away. Because if people wanted to talk to us tomorrow, they'd call us tomorrow. They wouldn't call us today. And that's the business we're in. And, as Woody Allen says, 90% of life is showing up, so just showing up is there. But I think that not everybody quite gets that. quite gets that how important that's such a differentiator. I always say, if I talk to people or are giving a presentation in front of a group of any kind of advisors, financial advisors, lawyers, accountants, bankers, whoever, I'd say if you could pick only one reason why I've been reasonably successful, it's been that I return phone calls with abandon, with a vengeance. And I also tell our team that the biggest frustration in our business is, since you have to collaborate with a lot of different people in complicated financial matters, you're going to spend sometimes 50% of your time just making sure other people are doing their job and doing it right and doing it on time, which is just like frustration, because who woke up today, say, I want to wait 45 minutes on the phone, with the phone company, or
Right.
who wants to wait 5 days for a response to a simple question that the client needs today. I mean, but again, it's amazing to me also when you talk about that, I said this at the top of the broadcast, and I would say this now. I think very few people are the best at what they do. I think you're the best at what you do, but it's not like the people that are in your industry are stupid or bad or lazy.
Oh, no.
They're good. They're very good. They're very smart. But the fact that these little differentiating things that are unique, remarkable, and therefore memorable, like, make you just stand head and shoulders above everybody else, because they don't have that same mindset. And it's amazing to me that even when you try to share that, which you do and I do with people, because we come from abundance, there's plenty of fish in the sea. There's plenty of people getting divorced. There's plenty of people that need financial advice. They still don't embrace it or don't seem to get it. I don't understand why. And if you work in my firm, if you don't get it, you can't be there. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
hard.
it's difficult. It's not easy to keep up with all the phone calls. I mean, it started out, it was phone calls,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and now it's phone calls, faxes, texts, emails, what's next? And it's very hard to do. But I think it's the most important thing. I really do. And, one of the things I tell the young associates that I have is, don't let things pile up. If you don't respond to something, it used to be, a pile of papers on your desk like
Right.
this. I couldn't go home at night. I could not put my head on the pillow until that pile was empty, because the next day the pile would be like this and then like this. Same thing with emails. If you don't keep up, texts, emails, faxes, scans, everything, you're never going to be able to catch up. And then you're behind the eight ball all the time. And I think if you just instantly respond, it's done. And I tell my young associates, like, just humor me, try it. You're not going to be, and they're like, well, but I'll be interrupted. I won't be able to. I said, you will be. You will be. You're going to respond to this, and then you're going to go back to that. Just do it. Just respond. Just communicate. The client needs you now. And they always come back to me and they say, it is kind of hard to get back on focus, but you're right. I'm like, I know that organizational skills are the key. And, we're all smart. We all went to law school or, got our master's degree, whatever it is, but we all don't communicate as well as we should. And I do agree that if you do that, even if you just say, I'll be back to you at 1:00, it makes you heads and shoulders above everyone else. And my clients, I have some adversaries and clients that like laugh at me. Like, were you waiting for my call? Because I just call them right back, because and I could be walking down the street, and I know you do this too. Like, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be sitting at your desk, relaxed, having a cup of coffee to call people back. You can be walking down the street. You can be, sitting in the back of an Uber. People just want to hear from you.
It's like business is so simple. It's like some simple things that it's amazing how few people do that. Like, I literally remember a few years ago talking to a colleague of mine, and he said to me, I have learned so much from you. He said, I call my clients back promptly, and they're not angry when I speak to them. Like, and I thought he was like,
Genius.
I thought he was like screwing with me. Like, I thought he was busting my chops, and it was like a sincere comment. And I'm thinking, what a revelation,
Sometimes it's the simplest things. I mean, I remember my very first mentor when I got out of law school was a lovely man, great lawyer, great person. And he loved sitting and chatting with me about, how to be a good lawyer. And how best to communicate with people and the like. And he said, you could be able to recite every case in the state of New Jersey and New York and the world, and no client would care about that if you didn't call them back.
Yeah, right.
I thought that was really smart. And he said, you need to be there when a client needs you. They don't care if you got an A in torts in law school, or if you knew every new case that came out of the Supreme Court. They want to talk to you. They want to know you're there, thinking about them, giving them advice when they need it. I thought that was excellent advice, and I took it.
One of the things as a financial advisor that I think is important, and first of all, I am a proponent of marriage. I'm a proponent of love. I still at this age I still believe in fairy tales, but at the same time, I think it's you have to be smart. And as a financial advisor, if divorce is certainly on the table, which it is for a lot of people, at least they're thinking about it. I think one of the most important things they need to do is they need to find out what their rights are and what it looks like. That I think that not when you made the decision to get divorced, but I think you have to know what divorce would look like financially and otherwise, because you sit together and you're planning people's lives and they say, well, I may or may not get divorced. And I said, well, one of the first things they need to do is call you and say, if I do get divorced, what does my retirement look like? What does my business look like? And I think they're like surprised that they kind of, instead of, ready, aim, fire, it's like fire, ready, aim. And then they're surprised that it's a cluster stup, because they haven't planned properly. And by the way, I hope if it's the right thing, I want them to stay together with their spouse. I want them to keep their family together. I don't think that's ever a great thing, but unfortunately it's part of life. And I think people wait too late to get your advice oftentimes. And they don't have enough information to make decisions, because divorce is made as a decision made on many levels, not just the relationship. It's the family, it's finances, it's health. It's there's dozens of variables you have to make in that decision. But do you think that's true, or do you think that that's not true?
Absolutely true. And, not to sound cliche, but knowledge is power, right?
Right.
So why wouldn't you get yourself educated about something that you're about to enter into, whether it's a divorce, whatever it is? Why not become educated? And I don't believe Googling New Jersey divorce is the way to get educated, because there's a lot of misinformation that's out there, and a lot of misunderstandings. I'll have clients say, I would like a consultation with you, Susan, but I've already Googled, New Jersey divorce, and I know pretty much everything about it. And honestly, they don't. They'll say, I understand that such and such. And I'll say, well, no, that's not the case. Well, I read it here. Well, that's not that. That's something different, whatever. But a lot of lawyers like myself offer free consultations. Why not take advantage of that? And if you talked to me for a couple of hours in a consultation, or any experienced lawyer in my field, they should be able to give you, quite an education. I call it family law 101. But, in a very short period of time, I can understand your income situation, your asset liability situation. And again, any experienced lawyer can kind of put that together pretty quickly, and not to the dollar, not to the exact percentages, but can say, this is kind of the range of where it would look. And I've often said to experienced lawyers, in the beginning of a case, let's say I represent the husband and my adversary represents the wife. We could write down on a piece of paper how it's all going to work out, not necessarily custody-wise, but certainly financially, and put that piece of paper in a sealed envelope and open it at the end of the case. And it would be within a 10% range of where we both said it would wind up. And I try not to get involved in nonsense. I try to focus on the issues that are important to my client. I don't, if they have emotional issues, again, the team is there. They can talk to the therapist. I try to focus on what I do best, which is dividing the assets, figuring out the income for alimony and child support purposes. And, I can do that in a consultation. Again, not to the dollar, but I can listen to you. You can tell me what your circumstances are. and I can tell you how the law will apply to your case and what it means for you. And I'll very often, even in that first consultation, ask, do you have a therapist? Do you have a financial advisor? Is there a business involved? If there is, we need to talk to a forensic accountant. Oftentimes business owners will call me and say, well, how's my business going to be, looked at in terms of New Jersey law? And when I tell them, it's kind of a scary process, and it's an expensive process. And I will say, maybe you want to talk to a forensic accountant before you embark on this divorce proceeding, and get a better idea of how a forensic accountant will look at your business, what documents he'll need to look at, what investigation he'll need to do. And again, once you're armed with that knowledge, I think jumping into it feels a little more like you have a parachute as opposed to an empty black hole at the bottom. So
one of the things that I learned from you early on, one of the great lessons that you taught me personally, was I think of you as an incredibly warm, empathetic, caring person, and I'd like to think of myself as the same. But when someone's going through a divorce, most of the time they're whipped up emotionally. And sometimes if you're almost too empathetic to them, you whip them up even further, which doesn't serve their purpose. And so, as I used to say, kind of tongue in cheek, I go, it doesn't matter if your spouse slept with an 11-year-old boy or a sheep. It doesn't have anything to do with the case in New Jersey. That let's focus on keeping focused on what the core issues are. And I think that's been very, so it took, like, one of our great strengths was our empathy, and we have to kind of check that at least initially to get the person to be able to make really good, wise decisions about their life going forward. And I thank you for that. That was like one of like invaluable lessons that you taught me, and I learned decades ago, and it served me so well over the years.
I remember the exact circumstance you're talking about, Mark, but I think you can be empathetic without stirring the pot, if you know what I mean. I mean, I don't think I ever leave my empathy genes at the door, but I also don't create issues. I don't. Right. And sometimes I'm accused of not being aggressive enough because I don't want to fight over, who gets the Cuisinart. Yeah. And I have to be the objective one. I have to be the one that does the analysis of cost benefit, and do you want to pay me my hourly rate to fight over a Cuisinart, which is a third of my hourly rate? It makes no sense to me. And I also don't want to create more animosity between a couple getting divorced, because 9 times out of 10, that couple needs to co-parent for a lot of years, for the rest of their lives. They need to raise their children together, even though they're divorced. And the more hostile the divorce is, the more animosity that's created in the divorce proceeding, the harder that is. You're mad at each other because you had such a terrible divorce and you're fighting over everything. The less you can do that going through the process, the better co-parents you're going to be when it's over. And the result is the same, and your life will be the same whether you get that Cuisinart or not. But I think there's a way to do that. And I think you've after my one little reprimand of you when you were, I think, just being a little too empathetic, it was amazing how you immediately figured that out. And I think, we work well together in that respect. We're kind to our clients, but we're not trying to create issues that don't exist or don't have to exist.
We'll put at the end of this podcast, we'll put where they can get it. But I think I think virtually everybody should buy your book, especially the one It Will Never Happen to Us. If they should buy it for themselves, they should buy it if they've got kids, they should buy it if they have grandkids. And I think everybody should do it. And one of the things I'd like to impose upon you, and don't feel any pressure to say yes, but I think one of the things we should do down the road is we ought to do a master class on this, because I think people would really, that have a lot of questions about all of these issues. And I think, I think you would give them a little direction in terms of, what they need to do to make their lives better. So I just want to thank you for.
I would love to do that. I mean, once you get past the prenuptial agreements aren't romantic, everyone realizes how valuable they are.
Yeah, and so
So
many.
that would be
I can't tell how many so many clients that I have that would roll over in their graves if they found out that an in-law got everything they worked for the last 60 years. That left their son or daughter. So I mean, just even that alone, I have people talk about to me about that almost every week or every day. But
And have you ever talked to anybody who's actually gotten divorced who didn't wish they had a prenup?
right here.
Wasn't thinking you, but maybe.
But I don't think anybody. I think it's a very popular club. But I just want to thank you for 25 years of friendship and partnership from both you and your entire family and Bob. And I just hope we get to have 25 more even better years together. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for everything. Thanks, Susan.